For 2 years, Isabella lived as the unseen wife in a cold, contractual marriage to millionaire Patrick Langley, until one gala sparked jealousy, defiance, and dangerous secrets. What happens when desire and betrayal collide? Before we begin, share where you're listening from and rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments. Enjoy this tales. The penthouse perched atop Manhattan's skyline, a glass and steel cathedral where wealth whispered in every polished surface. At dawn, when the city still slumbered under a veil of mist, Isabella Moreau moved through it like a specter. Her raven hair, loose and shimmering, caught the first slivers of light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her porcelain skin glowed faintly, a beauty so striking it seemed wasted in the sterile silence of this place. For 2 years, she had been the invisible wife of Patrick Langley, a millionaire whose jet-black hair and sculpted features masked a heart as cold as the contract binding them. Their marriage, a transaction to save her family's textile empire from bankruptcy, had reduced her to a shadow in her own life. Each morning followed the same relentless script. At 6 a.m., Isabella's alarm chimed softly, pulling her from the guest bedroom's plush but lonely embrace. She padded barefoot across the marble floor, her silk robe whispering against her legs, and entered the kitchen, a gleaming expanse of chrome and quartz. The coffee maker hummed as she brewed Patrick's espresso, its bitter aroma filling the air. She set out toast, butter, and a single grapefruit, arranged with precision on a tray. By 6:45, she was gone, retreating to her room before Patrick descended at 7 sharp. His indifference was a blade, sharper than any spoken rejection. In 2 years, he had never looked at her long enough to notice the green flecks in her hazel eyes, or the way her lips curved when she dreamed of freedom. Isabella had once been vibrant, a Yale economics graduate, with a laugh that turned heads and a mind that dissected markets with surgical precision. At 25, she'd stood on the cusp of a brilliant career, but her father's company, Moreau Textiles, had crumbled under a $200 million debt. The Langleys, titans of real estate, offered salvation: clear the debt, but at a price. Isabella, their only daughter, would marry Patrick, the heir whose ambition outshone his warmth. She'd signed her name on the dotted line, trading her future for her family's survival. Love was never part of the equation. The penthouse, for all its opulence, was a gilded cage. Its soaring ceilings and minimalist decor, black leather, glass, and steel, felt like an extension of Patrick's soul, immaculate, unyielding, remote. Isabella's world had shrunk to fit his schedule. She read in the garden nook, her fingers tracing the pages of Austen and Wharton, escaping into lives bolder than her own. She sketched designs for fabrics she'd never weave, her creativity stifled by the weight of her role. At night, she lay awake, the city's pulse beyond the windows, mocking her stillness. Patrick's bedroom, the master suite, was a forbidden realm she'd never entered. They were strangers sharing a roof, bound by ink and obligation. This morning, though, the script faltered. At 6:55 a.m., as Isabella reached for her coffee mug, the air shifted. Heavy footsteps echoed on the spiral staircase. Too early, too deliberate. Her heart stuttered. She set the mug down, its clink loud in the quiet, and turned toward the sound. Patrick stood in the kitchen doorway, his navy suit tailored to his broad shoulders, his black hair swept back, still damp from a shower. His eyes, a piercing blue, locked onto her. And for a moment, time froze. In 2 years, he'd never lingered long enough to truly see her. Now, his gaze held her captive, unreadable but intense. "Isabella," he said, his voice low, a rumble that sent a shiver down her spine. He rarely spoke her name, and its weight in his mouth felt foreign, almost intimate. She clutched the counter's edge, steadying herself. "Yes?" Her voice was soft but steady, masking the pulse hammering in her throat. "I need you at a company gala tomorrow night," he said, stepping closer. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood and citrus, invaded her space. "As my wife." The words landed like stones, each one sharp with implication. Isabella blinked, her mind racing. In 2 years, he'd never taken her anywhere. To the world, she was a rumor, the mysterious Mrs. Langley who existed only in whispers. "Why now?" "Why?" she asked, her tone sharper than intended. Defiance flickered in her chest, a spark she hadn't felt in months. Patrick's brow twitched, as if her question surprised him. "Business," he said, his voice clipped. "I need to project stability. Investors expect a family man. You're part of that image." The explanation was cold, transactional, yet it stung more than she expected. She was a prop, a piece of his perfect facade. Isabella's fingers tightened on the counter. She could refuse, walk away, let him face the gala alone. But something stirred, a hunger to step out of the shadows, to be seen, even if only as a role. She met his gaze, her hazel eyes glinting with resolve. "Fine," she said, her voice steady. "I'll go." Patrick nodded, a flicker of something, relief perhaps, crossing his face. He turned to leave, but paused, glancing back. "Wear something appropriate," he added, then disappeared up the stairs. Alone again, Isabella exhaled, her breath trembling. The kitchen felt smaller, the air charged with the weight of what had just shifted. Tomorrow, she'd step into his world, not as the invisible wife, but as Isabella Langley, a name she'd never truly claimed. She thought of the sapphire gown buried in her closet, bought years ago for a life she'd left behind. It was elegant, bold, a statement of who she'd once been. She'd wear it, not for him, but for herself. As she climbed the stairs to her room, her mind churned. What did Patrick want from this charade? Stability, he'd said, but his eyes had betrayed something else. Control, perhaps, or a crack in his icy armor. Isabella didn't know, but for the first time in 2 years, she felt the stirrings of power. She'd play his game, but on her terms. The gala loomed like a storm on the horizon, and she sensed it would change everything. The city's pulse thrummed beyond the penthouse windows as Isabella Moreau stood before her closet, fingers brushing the sapphire gown she'd chosen for Patrick Langley's gala. Its deep blue silk shimmered, a bold declaration of the woman she'd buried beneath 2 years of silence. The memory of Patrick's command, "Wear something appropriate," lingered, but so did her resolve. She wasn't his prop. Tonight, she'd reclaim a fragment of herself. The gala was hours away, and anticipation coiled in her chest like a spring, taut and ready to snap. By 7 p.m., Isabella descended the penthouse stairs, the gown hugging her curves, its neckline daring yet elegant. Her raven hair cascaded in soft waves, framing her porcelain face. Patrick waited in the foyer, his black tuxedo accentuating his broad shoulders and sharp jawline. His blue eyes flicked to her, pausing a beat longer than usual. A flicker of surprise or something deeper crossing his face. "You look adequate," he said, voice clipped, but the hesitation betrayed him. Isabella's lips curved faintly. "Let's go," she replied, brushing past him, her heels clicking on the marble. The Midtown ballroom was a glittering constellation of crystal chandeliers and power brokers, the air thick with expensive cologne and ambition. Isabella felt every eye as she entered on Patrick's arm, his hand light but possessive at her waist. Whispers trailed them, curiosity about the elusive Mrs. Langley. She kept her chin high, her hazel eyes scanning the room, refusing to shrink. Patrick steered her through introductions, his voice smooth as he played the doting husband. "My wife, Isabella," he said to a silver-haired CEO, the words sounding foreign, rehearsed. She smiled politely, her role clear, a silent ornament. Then Julian Carter approached, a tall man with warm brown eyes and a disarming smile. "Patrick, you've been hiding a gem," he said, extending a hand to Isabella. "Julian Carter, renewable energy." "And you are?" His tone was genuine, not the polished flattery of the room. "Isabella Moreau." "Langley," she said. The pause deliberate, her voice steady. Julian's eyes lit up. "I heard you studied economics at Yale. Mind if I pick your brain about Southeast Asian markets?" Her pulse quickened. Someone saw her mind, not just her face. "I'd like that," she said, warmth creeping into her tone. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Julian asked about trade policies, and Isabella's answers were sharp, drawing on knowledge she'd thought rusted from disuse. She felt alive, her voice gaining strength, her laughter soft but real. Patrick stood nearby, his jaw tightening as Julian leaned closer, his hand grazing hers to emphasize a point. "You're wasted in the shadows," Julian said earnestly. "I'm scouting talent for a project in Vietnam. Consultancy role. Interested?" Before Isabella could respond, Patrick's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "She's not." Isabella's eyes flashed. She turned to Patrick, his blue gaze stormy, his hand now a vice at her waist. "I am," she said, her voice low but firm. "Julian, let's discuss it over dinner. Tomorrow?" Julian nodded, unfazed by the tension. "Perfect. I'll call you." Patrick's grip tightened, his silence deafening as Julian stepped away. The room seemed to contract, the chatter fading under the weight of their unspoken clash. Isabella pulled free, her heart pounding. "You don't decide for me," she whispered, her words a spark in dry grass. The ride home was a study in silence, the city's neon lights streaking past the Bentley's windows. Patrick's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched. Isabella stared out, her defiance a shield against the ache of his dismissal. She'd agreed to Julian's dinner not just for the job, but to prove she existed beyond Patrick's script. The penthouse loomed as they arrived, its sterile elegance mocking her resolve. Patrick broke the silence at the door. "You're making a mistake," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "Am I?" she shot back, turning to face him. "Or are you just afraid I'm not yours to control?" His eyes darkened, but he said nothing, retreating to his office. Isabella climbed the stairs alone, her gown trailing like a battle flag. The next evening, Isabella stepped into a cozy Brooklyn diner, a stark contrast to the gala's opulence. Its warm lights and checkered floors felt like a balm, the scent of coffee and burgers grounding her. She wore a simple emerald dress, vibrant yet understated, her hair loose. Julian waited at a corner booth, his casual sweater a far cry from the gala's formality. "You look different," he said, smiling. "Freer." Isabella laughed softly. "This place helps." They ordered her a milkshake, him a coffee, and dove into talk of his project. Julian outlined plans for sustainable energy in rural Vietnam, asking her thoughts on local regulations. Her answers were precise, her mind alight with purpose she hadn't felt in years. Halfway through, the diner's door swung open, and Patrick strode in, his dark coat stark against the cozy glow. His eyes locked on Isabella, and then Julian's hand rested near hers on the table. "What are you doing?" he hissed, stopping at their booth, his voice a tightly coiled spring. Isabella's heart lurched, but she held his gaze. "Having a conversation," she said, each word deliberate. "Something you've avoided for 2 years." Julian shifted, sensing the storm. "Patrick, join us?" he offered, but Patrick's glare never wavered. "She's my wife," he said, the word heavy with possession. Isabella stood, her emerald dress catching the light. "Not your property," she snapped. "You don't get to ignore me for years and claim me now." The diner's hum faded, patrons glancing their way. Patrick's face was a mask of fury and something else, vulnerability, raw and unguarded. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, voice cracking. "Be a husband. I never learned." The confession hung between them, a thread of truth in the chaos. Isabella's anger faltered, but her resolve held. "Then figure it out," she said, softer but firm. "This isn't the way." She turned to Julian, apologizing, but he waved it off, slipping out with a nod. Patrick stood frozen as she brushed past him, her scent, lavender and defiance, lingering. The night air hit her like a slap as she stepped outside, the diner's warmth fading behind her. Something had broken open, and there was no going back. The Brooklyn night pressed against Isabella Moreau as she stepped out of the diner, the warmth of its checkered floors, and Julian Carter's kind eyes, already fading. Patrick Langley's words, "I don't know how to be a husband," echoed in her mind, a raw confession that cracked the armor of her anger, but didn't dull her resolve. She'd seen something in his blue eyes, a flicker of desperation, but it wasn't enough. 2 years of being invisible had forged a steel in her that wouldn't bend to his sudden claim. The city's pulse, honking taxis, distant sirens, urged her forward as she hailed a cab, leaving Patrick standing in the diner's glow. Her emerald dress caught the streetlights, a beacon of her defiance. Back at the penthouse, Isabella kicked off her heels, the marble floor cold against her feet. She didn't sleep. Instead, she sat by the garden nook's window, the city's skyline a glittering reminder of the world beyond her cage. Patrick's outburst had stirred something, a realization that her silence had enabled his indifference. No more. Julian's dinner invitation, set for the next evening, wasn't just about a job. It was a chance to reclaim her voice, her worth. She traced the edge of a sketchbook, her old designs for textiles, whispering of a life she'd abandoned. Tomorrow, she'd step into that life again, even if Patrick tried to stop her. The following evening, Isabella stood before her mirror, choosing a crimson dress that hugged her frame, its bold hue a challenge to the shadows she'd inhabited. Her raven hair fell in loose waves, framing her porcelain face, her hazel eyes sharp with purpose. Julian had suggested La Belle Époque, a French bistro in the West Village known for its candlelit intimacy and old-world charm. As she descended the penthouse stairs, Patrick's absence was palpable. No footsteps, no cold commands. She wondered if he'd retreated to his office, licking the wounds of their clash. The thought brought no satisfaction, only a pang of something she refused to name. La Belle Époque was a world apart from the diner's casual warmth. Its flickering candles cast golden shadows on exposed brick walls, and the soft clinking of wine glasses mingled with a pianist's gentle melody. Julian waited at a corner table, his navy blazer relaxed but polished, his smile brightening as he saw her. "Isabella, you're a vision," he said, standing to pull out her chair. She smiled, the compliment settling like a balm. "This place is perfect," she replied, easing into the seat, the crimson dress catching the candlelight. Their conversation sparked instantly. Julian outlined his project, sustainable energy hubs in rural Vietnam, probing her expertise on navigating local markets. "Your Yale thesis on trade barriers," he said, leaning forward. "It's exactly the insight we need." Isabella's pulse quickened. He'd researched her, seen her value beyond the gala's gloss. She spoke of regulatory hurdles, her voice steady, her mind alive with ideas she'd buried for years. For the first time in 2 years, she felt like Isabella Moreau, not Mrs. Langley. Julian listened intently, his hand resting near hers, a gesture of encouragement, not possession. "You're a natural," he said. "Join us. You could lead this." Before she could answer, a shadow fell over the table. Patrick stood there, his dark suit stark against the bistro's warmth, his blue eyes blazing. The air thickened, the pianist's notes faltering as heads turned. "Isabella," he said, voice low but edged with steel. "What are you doing?" Her heart slammed against her ribs, but she held his gaze, refusing to shrink. "Having a conversation," she said, each word a blade. "Something you've never bothered with." Julian shifted, his calm demeanor strained. "Patrick, join us," he offered. But Patrick's stare never left Isabella, his jaw clenched tight. "This is private," Patrick said, his tone a warning. Isabella stood, her crimson dress aflare in the dim light. "No, it's not," she shot back. "You don't get to dictate my life after ignoring me for 2 years." The bistro's murmurs hushed, eyes darting their way. Patrick stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, his cologne, sandalwood and citrus, invading her space. "You're my wife," he said, the word heavy with a possessiveness that ignited her fury. "Not your property," she snapped, her voice rising. "You've treated me like air, Patrick. Now you care because someone else sees me?" His face flickered. Anger, yes, but also something raw, unguarded. "I don't know how to do this," he said, softer, the admission cracking through his control. "Be a husband I wasn't taught." The words hit like a stone, stirring the ache she'd buried beneath her defiance. For a moment, she saw the boy behind the millionaire, lost in his fortress of ambition. But sympathy didn't erase the years of neglect. "Then learn," she said, her voice steady but laced with pain. "Not by storming in, claiming me like a prize, by seeing me." Julian cleared his throat, standing. "I'll give you two a moment," he said, his tone diplomatic but firm. He left a card on the table. "Isabella, call me about the job." He slipped out, leaving a void filled only by their tension. Patrick's eyes burned into hers, his hands clenched at his sides. "Why him?" he asked, voice low, almost desperate. "To prove I exist," she said, stepping closer, her gaze unflinching. "You forgot me, Patrick. Julian didn't." His jaw tightened, a flash of something, jealousy, regret, crossing his face. The bistro's patrons stared, their whispers a soft hum. Isabella felt exposed, but also powerful, her voice a weapon she'd forgotten she wielded. "You can't ignore me for years and expect loyalty," she said. "I'm not your shadow anymore." Patrick's hand twitched, as if to reach for her, but he stopped himself. "Isabella," he said, softer. "I'm trying." She shook her head, the weight of his words too late. "Try harder," she said, brushing past him, her crimson dress trailing like a banner of revolt. Outside, the West Village's cobblestone streets gleamed under streetlights, the night air sharp against her skin. Isabella walked, her heels clicking, her breath uneven. Patrick's confession had shaken her, but it wasn't enough. He'd seen her tonight, truly seen her, but only because another man had. The job with Julian loomed, a chance to rebuild, to be more than Mrs. Langley. But as she hailed a cab, a question gnawed. What did Patrick's desperation mean? Was it control or something deeper? The penthouse awaited, a battlefield where their next clash would unfold. The West Village's cobblestone streets faded behind Isabella Moreau as the cab sped toward the penthouse, her crimson dress a stark contrast to the night's blur. Patrick Langley's raw confession in the bistro, "I'm trying," clawed at her resolve. But the sting of his 2-year neglect kept her anchored. His sudden possessiveness, sparked by Julian Carter's attention, wasn't love. It was control, a reaction to losing what he'd taken for granted. Isabella's hazel eyes, reflected in the cab's window, burned with a fire she hadn't felt in years. She'd told him to try harder, but words were cheap. The penthouse loomed ahead, a glass fortress where truths waited to be unearthed. Inside, the silence was suffocating, the marble floors gleaming under dim lights. Patrick hadn't followed her, his absence a relief and a wound. Isabella kicked off her heels, the cold floor grounding her racing thoughts. Sleep was impossible. The bistro's clash replayed in her mind. Patrick's desperation, Julian's offer, her defiance. She wandered to the garden nook, her sanctuary, but the city's skyline offered no answers. A restless urge pulled her toward Patrick's office, a forbidden realm of glass and steel she'd never dared enter. If he was hiding something, she'd find it. The office door creaked open, revealing a minimalist shrine to power. Dark wood shelves, a sleek desk, and a wall of screens frozen on market data. The air smelled of leather and his cologne, sandalwood and citrus, a reminder of his presence. Isabella's heart pounded as she scanned the room, her fingers grazing a stack of files on a side table. One folder, blue and worn, caught her eye. Langley Industries Moreau Textiles Merger. Her breath hitched. This was the deal that had bound her to Patrick, the price of her family's salvation. She opened it, her hands trembling, expecting dry financial terms. What she found was a blade to her heart. The contract was brutally precise, each clause a shackle. Article 4.2. The marriage between Patrick Langley and Isabella Moreau shall serve as a stabilizing factor for the merger. Article 6.1. The union must be maintained for a minimum of 4 years to ensure business continuity. Worst of all, Article 6.3. The production of an heir within 3 years is encouraged to solidify long-term familial and corporate ties. Isabella's knees buckled. She sank into a leather chair, the file shaking in her hands. She wasn't a wife. She was a clause, a tool for succession, her body a means to an end. The signatures at the bottom, her father's, Patrick's father's, and Patrick's, sealed her fate. He'd known. Every cold glance, every silent morning was a choice. Tears burned, but she refused to let them fall. The betrayal cut deeper than Patrick's indifference. It was calculated, deliberate. She'd been a pawn in a game she hadn't known they were playing. Her mind spiraled. Had his jealousy at the bistro been about her, or about protecting his investment? The thought twisted like a knife. She clutched the file, its edges crumpling, and stood, resolve hardening. She'd confront him, demand he void this obscene contract, and return her family's company. If he loved her, as he'd claimed, he'd prove it. Footsteps broke her thoughts, heavy, deliberate. Patrick appeared in the doorway, his suit jacket gone, shirt sleeves rolled up, his black hair disheveled. His blue eyes widened, taking in the open file in her hands. "Isabella," he said, voice low, a mix of panic and guilt. She stepped forward, the file a weapon. "Explain this," she said, her voice cold, each word a shard of glass. "Explain why our marriage is a business deal. Explain why I'm supposed to produce an heir like some broodmare." Patrick's face paled, but he didn't look away. "It was 2 years ago," he said, stepping closer. "A condition to save your family." "I didn't want it either." His words were a weak defense, and Isabella's laugh was bitter, cutting. "Didn't want it? You signed it, Patrick. You knew and let me rot in this cage." She thrust the file at him, pages fluttering. "You knew I was a clause and you never cared." "I care now," he said, voice raw, taking another step. "What I feel for you, it's real." Isabella's heart twisted, but fury drowned it. "Real," she spat. "Was it real when you ignored me for 2 years? Or when you got jealous because Julian saw me as a person, not a contract?" Patrick flinched, his hands clenching. "I was wrong," he said. "I see you now. I want you." "Then prove it," she said, voice steady despite the storm within. "Void this contract. Return my family's company. If I'm more than a deal, show me." Patrick froze, his eyes flickering. A calculation, a weighing of costs. The silence stretched, each second a confirmation of her fears. $300 million, years of mergers, his father's legacy, all balanced against her. His hesitation was her answer. "You're still choosing money," she whispered, the words breaking something inside her. She set the file on the desk with eerie calm, her hands no longer shaking. Patrick reached for her, desperation in his eyes. "Isabella, please. I love you." The words, once a lifeline, now felt like chains. She stepped back, out of his reach. "You don't know what love is," she said, turning toward the door. In her bedroom, Isabella pulled a suitcase from the closet, her movements mechanical. She packed essentials, clothes, her sketchbook, a photo of her mother, each item a step away from this lie. Patrick followed, his voice cracking. "Don't go. We can fix this." She zipped the suitcase, the sound final. "Fix what?" she asked, facing him one last time, her hazel eyes empty. "A marriage built on deceit?" She dragged the suitcase past him, his silhouette blurring through unshed tears. The elevator's descent felt like falling. Isabella stepped into the Manhattan night, the city's chaos a stark contrast to the penthouse's silence. She hailed a cab, directing it to a Brooklyn hotel, a refuge far from Patrick's world. As the skyline receded, she clutched her bag, the contract's words seared into her mind. She was free, but at what cost? The truth had shattered her cage, but what lay beyond was a void. Unknown, terrifying, and hers to face alone. The Brooklyn Hotel's neon sign flickered against the night, casting a sickly glow over Isabella Moreau as she stepped from the cab, her suitcase a heavy anchor. The contract's cold clauses, her marriage a business deal, her body a tool for an heir, burned in her mind, each word a fresh wound. Patrick Langley's hesitation, that damning pause when she demanded he void the deal, had shattered any hope his desperate "I love you" might have kindled. The Manhattan skyline, glittering in the distance, felt like a taunt, a reminder of the gilded cage she'd fled. Inside the hotel, the lobby's stale air and chipped linoleum grounded her in a new reality, one she'd have to navigate alone. Her room was small, clean, but sterile, with a single window overlooking a noisy street. Isabella dropped her suitcase, the thud echoing in the quiet. She sank onto the bed, her crimson dress creasing beneath her, and let the weight of the night crash over her. 2 years of invisibility had been painful, but this betrayal cut deeper. A calculated lie signed by the man who'd claimed her heart in fleeting moments. She traced the edge of her sketchbook, pulled from her bag, its pages filled with textile designs she'd never woven. Who was she now, without the role of Mrs. Langley? The question gnawed, unanswered. Days blurred into a haze of sleepless nights and relentless nausea. Isabella chalked it up to stress, the betrayal's poison seeping into her body. She avoided her phone, its screen flashing with Patrick's calls and texts. Please, she couldn't bear to read. The hotel became her sanctuary, its anonymity a shield. She ventured out only for coffee, the corner deli's warmth a faint echo of the diner where Julian Carter had seen her worth. His business card sat on the nightstand, a temptation to reclaim her professional self. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. The contract's shadow loomed, its claws about an heir twisting her thoughts. Had Patrick's recent attention been about her, or about securing that legacy? On the 7th morning, the nausea hit harder, a violent wave that sent her stumbling to the bathroom. She gripped the sink, breathing through the dizziness, and a chilling thought struck. Her period was late, 2 weeks late. Her heart pounded as she opened her phone's calendar, confirming the math. "Impossible," she whispered, but doubt rooted deep. Trembling, she dressed in jeans and a sweater, her raven hair pulled back, and walked to a nearby pharmacy. The clerk's bored glance felt like judgment as she bought 3 pregnancy tests, her voice barely steady. Back in the room, the bathroom's fluorescent light was unforgiving. Isabella sat on the cold tile, the tests lined up on the sink, each minute an eternity. The results came swiftly, mercilessly, 2 red lines on each. Positive, positive, positive. She stared, her breath shallow, tears prickling. Pregnant. The word was a storm, stirring joy, fear, and despair. This child, growing within her, was Patrick's, a spark of their fleeting connection, or the cursed fulfillment of Article 6.3? She clutched her stomach, protective, yet terrified. How could she raise a child in this wreckage, tied to a man who'd built their life on lies? Isabella's mind spiraled. She imagined confronting Patrick, hurling the test at him, demanding answers. But what would she say? She picked up her phone, thumb hovering over his name, then stopped. No, this wasn't his moment, it was hers. She needed clarity, not his chaos. Wiping her tears, she typed a curt message. Penthouse, 1 hour, we need to talk. Her finger hesitated, then hit send. The reply was instant. Where are you? I'll come now. She ignored it, pocketing the tests and packing her bag. The penthouse, her former prison, was the only place to face this. She needed to stand where she'd been broken to decide what came next. The cab ride back to Manhattan was silent, the city's pulse a distant hum. Isabella's hand rested on her stomach, a reflex she didn't yet understand. The penthouse's glass tower loomed, its elegance now a facade she saw through. In the elevator, her reflection, pale, resolute, stared back. The doors opened and the living room's warm light surprised her. Patrick stood in the center, haggard, his black hair unkempt, his blue eyes sunken from sleepless nights. His shirt was wrinkled, the flawless CEO gone, replaced by a man stripped bare by desperation. Isabella, he breathed, hope flickering in his gaze. You're back. She didn't respond, brushing past him to the staircase. Her silence was a shield, her heart racing as she climbed to the bedroom they'd briefly shared, a space where, for a moment, she'd believed in him. Patrick followed, his footsteps heavy, respectful. She sat on the bed's edge, the white sheets stark against her jeans, and faced him. His presence filled the room, but she held the power now. Before I say anything, she said, voice trembling but firm, answer me honestly. What did you do with the contract? My family's company? Patrick knelt before her, his eyes locked on hers, no hesitation. I voided it, he said, voice clear. All of it. The lawyers are finalizing it. By next week, Moreau Textiles is your family's again. The money they got, it's theirs. My apology for 2 years of mistakes. Isabella's breath caught, her walls wavering. I chose you, he added, urgent. Not the money, not the deal, you. Tears welled, but she held them back, searching his face for deceit. She saw only sincerity, raw and unguarded. Her hand reached into her bag, pulling out the 3 tests. She placed them on the sheets between them, the red lines stark. I'm pregnant, Patrick, she said, voice barely above a whisper. His eyes widened, darting to the tests. Then, back to her. Shock melted into awe, then a joy so fierce it disarmed her. Pregnant, he repeated, as if tasting the word. He reached for her hands, tentative, and when she didn't pull away, he kissed them, tears in his eyes. This baby is ours, he said. Not a contract, ours. Isabella's defenses crumbled, tears spilling. She saw the man who'd failed her, but also the one fighting to be better. I don't trust you fully, she admitted, voice shaky. But I want to try, Patrick nodded, his grip tightening. I'll earn it, he vowed. For you, for our child. The room held them, fragile but whole, as a new life, unseen, unspoken, bound them to a future neither had dared imagine. The penthouse bedroom, once a battleground of unspoken hurts, held Isabella Moreau and Patrick Langley in a fragile truce. The 3 pregnancy tests lay between them on the white sheets, their red lines a silent vow of a future neither had foreseen. Isabella's confession, "I'm pregnant, Patrick," had unraveled the last threads of her defenses, and his fervent response, "This baby is ours," echoed with a sincerity that shook her. His blue eyes, wet with tears, held no trace of the cold millionaire who'd signed her life away. Yet, her admission, "I don't trust you fully," hung in the air, a truth as raw as the hope budding within her. As Patrick's hands clasped hers, warm and steady, Isabella felt the weight of 2 years begin to lift, replaced by a cautious promise. The Manhattan night pressed against the windows, but inside, a new dawn was breaking. Morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and golden, bathing the bedroom in a warmth Isabella hadn't felt in years. She woke in Patrick's arms, his steady breathing a quiet anchor. Her raven hair spilled across the pillow, and for the first time, the penthouse didn't feel like a cage. The scent of lavender lingered, her favorite, a small vase of it now on the bedside table, a gesture Patrick must have made while she was gone. She shifted, her hand resting instinctively on her still flat stomach, marveling at the life within. Fear lingered, but so did a fierce determination to protect this child, not as a clause, but as a piece of her heart. Patrick stirred, his eyes opening to meet hers. "Good morning," he said, voice hoarse with sleep, a smile breaking through the exhaustion etched into his face. He looked different, thinner, unguarded, the flawless CEO replaced by a man learning to love. "How do you feel?" he asked, his hand covering hers on her stomach, gentle but reverent. Isabella hesitated, then smiled, a small but genuine curve of her lips. "Whole," she said, the word surprising her with its truth. For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't a ghost. He rose, insisting she stay in bed, and returned with a tray, fresh orange juice, croissants, and a bowl of oatmeal laced with berries. The spread was simple but thoughtful, a blend of her taste he'd somehow learned. "You don't have to do this," she said, embarrassed by the attention. "I want to," he replied, sitting beside her. "For you, for our baby." The word baby hung between them, a bridge from their fractured past to an uncertain future. As they ate, the silence was comfortable, not oppressive, a sign of something shifting. Days turned to weeks, each one a step toward rediscovery. Patrick didn't retreat to his office or hide behind his empire. He learned her love for jazz, the way her hazel eyes lit up when she sketched, her sharp wit that had dulled under neglect. One evening, he played Ella Fitzgerald on the penthouse's sound system, pulling her into a slow dance in the living room. Her laughter, soft and unguarded, filled the space, and his arms around her felt like a promise, not possession. "I missed this," he murmured, his lips brushing her forehead. "I missed you." Isabella's heart tightened, but she let herself lean into him, testing the trust she was rebuilding. The contract's shadow faded. Patrick shared updates from the lawyers. Moreau Textiles was fully returned to her family, and the $300 million deal dissolved. He showed her the documents, his signature voiding every clause, including the one about an heir. "It's gone," he said, voice firm. "You're not a deal to me." Isabella read the papers, her fingers tracing the ink, and felt a weight lift. Her father called, voice thick with gratitude, but she deflected, unwilling to revisit the past. This was her future now, hers and Patrick's. Yet, trust was a fragile thing. Late one night, as spring bloomed over Manhattan, Isabella woke to find Patrick gone from their bed. Panic flared, old wounds whispering of betrayal. She found him in the garden nook, staring at the skyline, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. "I'm scared," he admitted when she joined him, her robe wrapped tight against the chill. "I don't want to fail you again," or our child. His vulnerability disarmed her. She took his hand, her voice steady. Then don't. We're learning together. He pulled her close, and under the city's endless lights, they stood as equals, not pawns. Isabella began sketching again, her designs bolder, infused with the strength she'd reclaimed. Julian Carter's job offer lingered, but she declined, choosing to consult independently, her mind alive with possibility. Patrick supported her, clearing a penthouse room for a studio, its walls soon lined with her fabrics. One afternoon, he brought her a swatch of lavender silk, a nod to her favorite scent. "For your next piece," he said, grinning. She laughed, the sound a melody that echoed through their home. As her belly began to curve, Patrick's hand was always there, tracing the life they'd created. At a doctor's visit, the ultrasound's heartbeat filled the room, a rapid rhythm that brought tears to their eyes. "Our new beginning," he whispered, kissing her temple. Isabella nodded, her fears quieting. The penthouse, once a tomb, hummed with life, shared meals, quiet evenings, plans for a nursery. The city beyond their windows was no longer a taunt, but a canvas for their family. One spring morning, Isabella stood by the living room window, Patrick's arms around her, his hands resting on her growing belly. The skyline sparkled, vibrant and alive. "I want to be your husband," he said, voice low, echoing his vow from that tear-streaked night. "In every way." She turned, her hazel eyes meeting his, and saw only love, no shadows. "I want that too," she said, her fingers brushing his jaw. "I'm your wife, Patrick. For real." The contract was dead, its lies buried. In its place, a family bloomed, forged not in deals but in a love tested by fire and reborn in truth. We hope their tale of betrayal, redemption, and reborn love touched your heart. What did you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. Did Patrick's change win you over, or did Isabella's strength steal the show? Let us know where you're listening from and what stories you'd love to hear next. Your support keeps this community alive, so don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell for more heartfelt tales. Until next time, keep believing in love's power to heal. See you soon.